It is Tuesday. It is the 24th of June. I'm Monita Rajpal. This is CNN News Center, live from Hong Kong. Our top stories today. America's top diplomat is pushing Iraqi leaders towards forming a new government as parts of the country fall by the day. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Kurdish leaders a short time ago. He's there to discuss their role in helping Baghdad stabilize the country in Beijing. Well, Kerry's visit is a strategic one. The Kurds are important players in this worsening crisis. If you look at this map, you can see the Sunni and Shiites occupy mainly the east and the west, but it's the Kurds shown here in yellow that control Kurdistan. That's an autonomous region in the north. It is perhaps the country's most stable area right now, thanks to the Peshmerga. They're a well-trained fighting force that's been helping drive ISIS militants out of Mosul and out of Kirkuk. Well, let's take you live now to Iraq and CNN's Nema Al-Baghir, who joins us from the Iraqi capital. So, Nema, there is a political push from outside of the country for there to be some sort of a solution, but it seems as though the military push is weaker than anything else.
Absolutely, Monita. We've been on this carousel of claim and counterclaim over the years.
Nema, thank you. Nema Al-Baghir there live for us from Baghdad. Well, as Nema mentioned, Secretary Kerry met with the Kurdish region's president, Masoud Barzani, just a short time ago. Well, on Monday, Mr. Barzani spoke exclusively to CNN's Christiane Amanpour and suggested there will now be a strong push for independence.
The time is here for the Kurdistan people to determine their future.
On CNN. Some of the other stories that we're following here at CNN News Center, rescuers have found another body from inside the South Korean ferry that sank in April, bringing the official death toll to 293. Meantime, the captain of the ship and 14 crew members are back in court today. They're accused of crimes including murder and abandoning ship. An international watchdog group says all of Syria's declared chemical weapons have been shipped out, but the group could not say if the country has eliminated all of its stockpile. The UN Security Council called on Damascus to dismantle its program after a UN report found clear and convincing evidence that sarin gas had been used in an attack near the capital. A Japanese lawmaker has publicly admitted to making sexist remarks to his female colleague. This is Akihiro Suzuki, a member of the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly, bowing in apology to fellow Assembly member Ayaka Shiomura. He had initially denied any involvement. A Sudanese woman sentenced to death for converting from Islam to Christianity has been set free. This photo shows Miriam Ibrahim after her release from a prison in Khartoum. An appeals court overturned her conviction. The daughter in her lap was born while she was behind bars. Well, remember, Ibrahim was sentenced to death by hanging last month after being charged with apostasy as well as adultery for marrying a Christian. Her lawyer says the couple is happy with the appeals court ruling.
We forwarded an appeal, and I believe it was convincing, and we are happy with the decision.
Ibrahim's husband tells British newspaper The Guardian that he hopes his family can now start a new life in the United States. He is a U.S. citizen and asked American officials to fast-track an asylum request earlier this month. You are watching CNN News Center live from Hong Kong. You are watching CNN News Center live from Hong Kong. I'm Monita Rajpal. We will look ahead to today's World Cup matches and the win-or-go-home clash between Italy and Uruguay in just a moment. But first, we begin with the host nation. After unconvincing performances against Croatia and Mexico, Brazil turned on the style to produce a flurry of goals against already doomed Cameroon to seal their place in the last 16. Brazilian star Neymar lit up the pitch. Alex Thomas has the details from Rio.
Whichever fairy godmother writes Neymar's storybooks.
Mexico is already through to the final 16 in the World Cup after securing 2 wins and a draw in the group stage. The team's success is not just being celebrated in Mexico, but also across the U.S. by many of the millions of Americans with Mexican heritage. Stephanie Elam went to meet some of these fans.
Of all the countries playing in the World Cup, there's one team.
While the U.S. prepares to play Germany on Thursday, the manager of the U.S. squad is speaking out against the scheduling of World Cup games. Jürgen Klinsmann, who is German, says Germany has an unfair advantage by having an extra day of rest. World Cup. You're watching CNN News Center live from Hong Kong. Next, reporters around the world express anger as 3 Al Jazeera journalists are sent to prison in Egypt. You're watching CNN News Center live from Hong Kong. Doctors Without Borders says an Ebola virus outbreak has hit unprecedented proportions in West Africa. The World Health Organization says there have been 567 cases and 350 deaths. Well, it's a ruling that has outraged people around the world. On Monday, an Egyptian court convicted 3 Al Jazeera journalists of aiding the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood. In about 20 minutes, journalists in London will gather for a silent protest to mark the time when the verdict was handed down. Peter Gresta and Mohammed Fahmy were sentenced to 7 years in prison. Their colleague, Bahar Mohammed, for 10. Gresta's father says they did nothing wrong.
He's not a criminal.
3 other international journalists were also sentenced to 10 years each on similar charges, but they were not in Egypt for their trials or the sentencing. Beyond Egypt, there are 167 journalists imprisoned around the world. Organization. Let's switch gears now and get a check of weather conditions. Karen McGuinness joins us now from the World Weather Center. And Karen, we're talking about some major flooding in China where millions are now affected.
Yes, and this is part of the summer rainy season, the summer pattern.
Monita? All right, Karen, thank you. And finally today, just as things were looking up for Michael Schumacher, the former Formula One champion's manager says Schumacher's medical files have been stolen and offered for sale. The stolen data. You're watching CNN News Center. I'm Monita Rajpal at CNN Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us. I'll update you the news headlines in just a few minutes.